Hi, it's Anna. Welcome back to Books on the Go. I'm here with the Vlogmas original tag, and thank you very much to Shawn Mooney at Shawn the Book Maniac for tagging me. And this was a good prompt to get me to do another video since I've been very slack. So thank you, Shawn. And when I saw Vlogmas, I thought, oh no, is that thing where you have to do a video every single day? Which clearly, and obviously you would have known that wasn't going to work. Clearly I'm not that proficient, but luckily it's much easier and more fun, which is just prompts that spell Vlogmas and start with each letter. So that's very good. We can do that. So on with the tag. The first letter is V, and V is for Voyage. So it is a book that involves travel. And I really love travel memoirs or travel biographies, actually. So that's a genre of book that I think, because it combines escapism and often there's a story, or you're learning about the author or the person, and you learn about the country as well. It's a really, if it's done well, it can be a really wonderful escapist read. And so I have two, there are many that I could show you, but one that I just read recently actually is Stefan Zweig, Journeys. So I thought that really fits the bill. It's all about journeys and voyages. And I love Stefan Zweig, and so I always love to just be in his world, and his turn of phrase was so, it's translated, edited and translated by Will Stone, and who also does the introduction. So it's also beautifully translated, but his writing is so clean and engaging, and he has such a friendly tone and a very human, compassionate view of the world. And he's traveling in the early 1900s and right through to 1940, 41, and partly because he's fleeing from Austria was the country of his birth, but because he was Jewish, he had to go on the move, and he went to England. There's a wonderful piece on Hyde Park, and the fact that Hyde Park really is not empty, but it's just the place where people do things rather than being beautiful in and of itself. And just he falls in love with that. And there's this wonderful chapter about to travel or be travelled, and it's all about the beginning of tour groups. So travelling to a country on a bus with a group and a tour guide, and he sort of has a horror of that, but he describes it. It's only a couple of pages, but it's such a good description, and really interesting that this piece was written in 1926, and yet the sort of issues that he thinks, the fact that everything's organised and you lose the mistakes that can happen in travel, or you lose the spontaneity, would still apply today, I think. For anyone who doesn't like organised tours, this would still be, highly relevant. So he is just a wonderful, engaging writer, and it's a short one that you can dip in and out of. So I recommend Journeys. And of course, he also makes you think about the interconnectedness of European countries, which in this time of Brexit is very much, very topical. It's always interesting to me how you can go back and read someone like Stefan Zweig, and everything rings true and feels as if it, could be written today. So really interesting. That's that one. That's Journeys. And then the other one that I just remembered that I read a few years ago, which I just lost myself in for a few days down at the beach house, was The Cruise of the Vanadis by Edith Wharton, with photography by Jonas Dovidinas. And this is just a beautiful account. It's sort of her diary of her journey across the Greek islands, or across the Mediterranean, which isn't just the Greek islands, I should say. Where else does she go? She goes to Athens, the Ionian Islands. She goes to Smyrna, Malta, Syracuse, and I think Sicily, and Rhodes. So there is a lot of history woven through, but it's just a beautifully written account of this voyage. And it has all the escapist elements of the places she goes to, her impressions of it, and then the way that people travelled, and she was quite well off, I think, so in style, the way people travelled back in those days, and it's just such a wonderful escapist read. So I remember really loving that. I haven't looked back at it recently, but that's The Cruise of the Vanadis by Edith Wharton. The next prompt is LGBTQ, a recommended book or an author. And the one that I picked for this, there were a few, but I picked Jeanette Winterson, and this is The Passion, which I only read, I think Annie and I read it last year, and it was the first time I'd read Jeanette Winterson. I knew of her, and I just hadn't, you know how it is, I just hadn't got around to reading some of her books. And so this one I read, and then this year I read Frankenstein, and I just loved both of those. There are more that I still have to go back and read, but she has such a wonderful writing style, a great sense of humour, and The Passion I just thought was so original, so interesting. The characters were really strong, and it had that sense of place in Venice, but slightly fantastical and just really imaginative. And this one, I was laughing out loud at some of the scenes in this with Ron Lord? The entrepreneur, Ron Lord, the entrepreneur of the toys, and some of the other scenes. I just thought it was really, really well done, very engaging, and she just has a great economical writing style, and she gets colourful characters and very, very intelligent. So that's Jeanette Winterson. And then the next prompt is an oldie but a goodie, so a book that you read a long time ago that still resonates. And for that one, I mean, how long ago? I wasn't sure how long ago we're meant to go with this one. So I went back to sort of a childhood book, and it's Finn Family Moomintroll by Tove Jansson. And I just remember being really transported by this and loving the intricate illustrations, and the story was so adorable and engaging, and something I think it must have just struck a chord because it was different to anything I'd read. And it's all about the Moomins, and I think they've been in hibernation, and they wake up and they just go about their day and have adventures, and they're very cute. And I'm not normally into books about animals, not that they're necessarily animals, they're sort of fantastical creatures, but they're so, they're human, they feel human, as in the way they interact. And just, you can see here the illustrations, which I think Tove Jansson did herself, because she was also an artist and a sculptor. And I should add, again, this is translated by Elizabeth Porch, from the Finnish, I think she was. And so just the line drawings, and you feel as if there's a whole world that she creates. Hi, I'm back. I was just recording and it stopped recording halfway through. So I've lost about 10 minutes. But I think what happens is when someone rings on my phone, it just stops recording. But because I have it on silent, I don't know that someone's tried to call until I finish the video and then see that it didn't record half of the video. So we were talking about this wonderful, wonderful Finn Family Moomintroll by Tove Jansson. I have a vivid memory of loving this book, and I love Tove Jansson. And so what's special about this is then discovering in recent years that she wrote novels for adults and short stories as well. So I've been buying them bit by bit, and at the moment I have on my shelf the winter book, which it's midsummer at the moment, so it doesn't feel like the time to read it. But I also did read the summer book and loved that, and I can recommend all of her work, and it's just really memorable. So Finn Family Moomintroll. And the next prompt is gifts, G for gifts and gift giving. So book that you've given or received. So of course there are lots of these, but one that I did fairly recently was for my 40th birthday. I asked people, instead of a gift, just to bring a book. to build, my library. And I had lots of really fun gifts from this, and some beautiful sort of large coffee table books, which were really sort of substantial and quite stunning, that I am very lucky to have, and also a few novels. But one that I don't think I knew about, and I wouldn't have picked it up necessarily, was the Andy Warhol Diaries, edited by Pat Hackett. And this looks large. Well, it is large. It is long. And so when I got it, I took it to the beach house, and I thought I would just dip in and out and read a little bit here and there, but I became glued to it, and I ended up reading it from cover to cover. And I think how it started was that Andy Warhol was claiming tax deductions for his expenses, which included taxis to parties and things like that, because that was part of his work, and he was questioned about it. And so he began the practice of every morning at 9 a.m. phoning his secretary and detailing where he went the day before. And so he'd say, I went to this party and it was $2 taxi, and so on. And so that he had a paper trail of, he had an account of all of his expenses. But of course it becomes this whole story of him and his life in New York in the 1970s through to his death in 1987, I think it was. And it's so interesting, and it's also he's a real character, so you get almost a narrative arc of him and things that happened to him through that time, and other characters who pop in and out, and some of them recur. And so he'll go to, Calvin Klein's house for a party, or he'll go to Diane von Furstenberg's, and she serves the same food every time. And you get all these little snippets, and you just get a sense of him as as an entrepreneur, as a business brain, and as an artist in his own way. And he has relationships, and they on again, off again, and all sorts of things. And it's beautifully edited, I have to say, because I think they would have taken out maybe the more boring stuff, and they've just left in enough that it does have pace and a sense of moving along, and just really, really interesting. And I felt it reads like a novel, I think, but a really original, a different style of novel. So I highly recommend that if you haven't read it. And again, that's just one that if someone hadn't given that to me, I don't know that I would have ever read it. So that's the Andy Warhol Diaries. And also on the gift-giving theme, it is the time of advent calendars at the moment. And advent calendar, it is a thing. You have to really be organised in November to get it going on the 1st of December. And that's a struggle for me, because November I'm in absolute denial about Christmas. But what I've been doing with my children is, instead of the candies and the chocolates, I've been giving them secondhand books. And it actually does get expensive, even though, even when you can source them secondhand. But I think that sort of goes towards the Christmas present, so that's okay. And it is fun for them. So I've been giving my son the Famous Five series, which he hasn't read before, so he's really enjoying that, and that's fun for me because I loved those as a child. And for my daughter, I've been doing some of the old Babysitters Club. So I don't know if you remember those, and also some of the original Nancy Drew mysteries. So they are really good fun. They're just, good, easy reads. They're almost getting through one a day, so I'm really having to keep this up. And I haven't got 24 books for each, so it's going to run out on about the 16th of December. So we're just making it up a bit as we go along. But that's just a fun advent calendar idea. And M is for Mass-Market Paperback. So I wasn't sure what that was. I had to watch Shawn's video carefully, and I think it's just like a paperback book, just this sort of size, I think, which I don't mind those at all, and particularly for travel. So if I am traveling and I've got my handbag and I'm putting a book in there for the plane or something like that, or a carry-on bag for the plane, this is a really good size. So it's compact. And generally speaking, they're quite readable. Some of the poor quality ones, I wouldn't read. I have become more fussy about what editions of books I will buy now. If they're really thin paper and tiny print, it is maybe not as attractive, but this one was fine. And so something like that, is that mass market? I don't know, but that's just a beautiful edition. It is quite small print, but it's lovely and compact and easy, portable. So no, I don't mind the mass market paperbacks on the whole. The next prompt is A for All in the Family. So were your parents readers? Yes, both my parents are quite big readers, different styles of books, but Dad would read history, crime, and the sort of English comedies. So he got me into P.G. Wodehouse, who I just adore, and I know that it's very old-fashioned now, but I find his books very escapist, very comforting, and in most of his books, at one point or another, I've laughed out loud and been crying with laughter with some of his Jeeves books in particular. They're just exquisitely funny, and I think he was an absolute genius. And yes, Mum reads a lot as well, sort of contemporary fiction mainly, and my grandmothers were both voracious readers as well, so it's always been in the family. And the next prompt is S for Santa, so books on your Christmas wish list, which is a tongue twister, but of course I have many. I've asked for Olive Again by Elizabeth Strout, which I'm dying to read. I read her Olive Kitteridge this year and loved it. And I've got also on my Christmas wish list The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. But I did give this to Mum earlier this year, and so it might be that I could borrow that one, and that could be the gift that keeps on giving, but otherwise it's on my wish list. And there was Still Love by Fable Parrott, who's an Australian author, and I keep hearing really good things about There Was Still Love, so I've decided that I must read it, and that's on my wish list as well. So that's it from me. I don't have anyone specifically to tag because I feel really out of touch with YouTube at the moment, and I don't know. So please consider yourself tagged if you're watching this. I'd love to see some more Vlogmas videos, and I will be back soon, so I will see you then. Bye for now.